Hey, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where we're going to talk a little bit about fasting today. A lot about fasting today. So if you were with me last week, I told you my husband and I were starting a 4-day fast. And I thought, well, before I start fast, I'm going to go do a deep dive on it. I want to truly understand, right? I've worked with people who do fasting or have done fasting, but I wanted to have a real true understanding. Men and women are very different. And so I wanted to have a good understanding of what's going on with my husband as he's fasting, what's going on with me as I'm fasting, and then I'm just a nerd. I want to know, right? So that was a cool thing. So I figured today we talk about that, and we go pretty deep into fasting, what that looks like, all the different types of fasting, and so forth. So let's see, make sure my buttons are pushed here. First, though, we start the show with gratitude. Gratitude can change the world. It's always something good to be grateful for, or maybe it's not so great. But we still, it teaches us lessons, right? Which means it's good. It's just not always easy. So those are the things that we want to be grateful for, that I'm grateful for. I do this a lot because I love the sun. But right now, I'm super grateful that today, I think it's going to be almost 60 degrees. This is kind of unheard of for Colorado weather in February, but I'll take it when I can. So it's clear, beautiful, going to be, 55 or 60 or something like that, and for the next couple of days. So so great to be able to go sit out in the sun and get a little bit of sunshine on the skin in mid-February. Grateful to be heading to Mexico for an even deep dive, literally, into the ocean and getting some good sun. That's coming up for us here in about a month, so super grateful for that. I'm grateful also that my husband is the one who suggested doing this 4-day fast. We were watching a show, someone doing a 4-day fast with Dr. Peter Attia, who is one of he's like this super anti-aging, biohacking guru, and it was his idea during the show to do this 4-day fast. So we watched that, and my husband was like, beginning of the year we're always we do a cleanse, and we do we don't drink, and for the first month, and I'm probably going to continue that for a while. But anyway, he's like, we're doing all of these things, why don't we do this 4-day fast? And I thought, okay, well, I'm in healthcare. This is probably something I should do. People ask me about this stuff all the time, and I've never done it myself. But holy smokes, I really don't want to do it. Because I like to eat. Eating is good. And I also know that when my blood sugar drops, if I'm working, it's hard for me to focus. And so originally when he decided to schedule, he has to put everything on the calendar, right? He decided to schedule our fasting dates. It was kind of this end of January, early February date, which was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And I was like, no way I canceled that schedule on the calendar. I was like, there's no way I'm going to try to work with clients on, 3 and 4 days of no food. It's just, I know me, I know it's not going to work, and I need to not do it that way. And he's like, okay, that makes perfect sense. He just wasn't really thinking about it. He was thinking about the end of our cleanse, the end of our no alcohol, the end of this thing. We're going to do this fast. So, point to all of that is I'm grateful for him for suggesting it, which pushed me into this deep dive, and this is where we are today. And he also helped me get through it. I think that he had a little bit of an easier time than I did. I do think that I know there's, which is why I want to talk about this today. There are big differences in fasting with men and women. Women need to be much more careful when it comes to different types of fasting than men do. We have our hormonal cycles. We have, the list goes on. But the fact is, the fasting is historical. It's traditional. It's biblical. And it's an amazing way of resetting the body if you're doing it properly, and if you're doing it in a manner that is there's some stress. Some stress on the body is good, and it's okay, and it's what helps us to grow. But then there's stress that's too much. And so I think that understanding who you are, what your body is how your body reacts to things, and maybe going into these things slowly, but also doing the research. This isn't something that we just jump into. I think it's enough of a stressor on the body that you want to know how your body's going to react. Then, though, of course, as I go into my deep dive, my thought process is, okay, I have all of these details about men and women fasting, and hormonal influence, and thyroid influence, and what it looks like then to refeed, and what are the different stages, what's going on with the body in these different stages. And I was like, well, I got to know about the genetic piece too, right? Some people are going to do really well with fasting, but then we want to understand, in my mind, our potential, because this is a huge part of, if not the main part of, who we are and how we're built, and how we're going to react to different things based on our genetic variants and how they might be expressing, right? So there are variants that control stress and cortisol and lipids and blood sugar, and the list goes on. So understanding that next layer of fasting, to me, is fascinating, but is really helpful in understanding, okay, what is it that I should do, what's best for me, and maybe I should do one type of fasting, or one timing in fasting over another. So not everybody wants to dig that deep, but I think that it's a great thing to do, and it can be super helpful. Another thing that I think is pretty cool about all of this is, as I'm digging into fasting and what that looks like from a biology standpoint, my husband was doing a deep dive, well, not a deep dive, but he was diving into it from a biblical standpoint, which was really fun too. And so I came home after the show last week, after I had said, told everybody here that I'm doing a fast. I just started a fast. And he started telling me what he found in the Bible about fasting. And so, it's talking about how important it is, and it's kind of this reset and this downtime. But when we fast, we don't have this down face, right? It's not, we don't come across, and we don't boast about it and promote it, and talk about how hard it is and how terrible it is, and we have a smile on our face, right? It's more of a spiritual reset. It's more of this is a way of connecting to God and taking the food piece out of it. And so he's telling me all of these things, and I'm like, well, I just told 250,000 people that we're doing that. So it wasn't really. Although both of our intent was to take it as a spiritual fast and bring in our time of prayer and meditation and Bible study and that kind of thing. But I certainly did talk more about it than maybe I was expected to. But the fact is, I did it, and I think it's part of sharing the experience and a part of sharing any knowledge that I've gained from it. So any of you can take what I have brought to it, and if you want to dig deeper, great, dig deeper, because this is certainly not my expertise, although I know a lot more now than I did. But it is what it is. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk to everybody about it, and we're going to learn from it and experience it if we want to, and then I'll tell you all about my experiences with it. And so I'll start out saying, though, that kind of what I said a few minutes ago is, I know that is, one, genetically, but two, I like to eat, and I like to eat regularly. I eat, at least twice a day. Sometimes I eat 3 times a day. And this isn't based on anything other than me listening to when I'm hungry. So I eat when I'm hungry. Doesn't mean I'm fasting. I don't intermittent fast, and we're going to dig into why I don't. So I'll tell you my schedule. Essentially, my eating schedule is, when I wake up in the morning, I'll do hot water with ginger and lemon, sometimes with a pepper. sometimes with some, little turmeric essential oils, kind of depends on my mood. But I'll do that in the morning. I love that. I really come to love that. I'm going to tell you what I do too, totally off topic, but I think it's super cool for those who maybe would want to do something like this because it makes it easy. So for our coffee, we have an espresso maker. So obviously there's no coffee in there. It's just going to get you hot water. And so I will take a lemon and ginger, and I will put it in with water in my Vitamix, and then I'll pour it into, and blend it obviously, but then pour it into those, not plastic, but I think silicone ice cube makers. So they're big ice cube makers, and I'll put it in the freezer so I have it ready to go as soon as I get up in the morning. So pop one out, stick it in my coffee cup, and run water through the espresso maker, and I've got my, it takes all of, 2 minutes to make my lemon ginger water. It's great. And I'm not making a bunch of noise because I'm always the first one up. So, makes it really easy. But that's my habit. And then, does that break a fast? Probably, because it's got some calories to it. So I'm going to say, yes, it's going to break the fast right there. But then for my coffee, I make my own, nut and seed milk. And so, and I'll put my protein in it. So it's not like it's a big meal, but it certainly is, somewhere between 5 and 7 o'clock. I am breaking my fast, but it's super light. So then the real food comes in for me 10, 11, 12 o'clock. And so then I have lunch and then I have dinner. So that's that's my schedule, but that's what keeps my blood sugar in check and keeps me, focused and moving forward in my day. That's not everybody. Some people do really well with the other types of fasting, or with like intermittent fasting. And so that's where we want to get into the details of all of this, because, we're so bio-individually unique. And I think that understanding that and not creating more pressure, more stress is really important, just because we think it's something that we should do or that we're supposed to do, or because we did it in our hunter-gatherer days, and then we end up, messing with our thyroid and, creating more problems than good, right? So we don't want to do that either. So as I'm digging into all of the data that I wanted to learn and understand about fasting, the first place I went, because I'm a woman, is I went to the book Fast Like a Girl. And so this is by Dr. Mindy Pelz. Really, really great book. So if you're a woman, you want to learn how to fast, you want to get into the details of fasting with your cycle, that's a really important thing for you to understand as a cycling woman, is if you're going to fast, know what it looks like to fast with your cycle. And I'll give a little bit of details in here, but she gives a lot of detail. She gives a lot of detail what it looks like. She gives details on, the different timings of fasting and what's going on during all of that. Again, some of the stuff we'll dig into here, but she goes really deep, and she gives some recipes and some ideas, and I got a lot out of that book. And so I think that because we are so different than men, that any woman who wants to take the time and learn more to understand the best way for their body to fast, it's a great book to get. Okay, so there are others. We've got the fasting-mimicking diets, right? So Walter Longo he has built out the fasting-mimicking diet. I've done that multiple times, and I've gone with clients who've done that as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We've got Dr. Sachin Panda. We've got Dr. Peter Attia, who I mentioned a little while ago. And then, there's some others, Will Cole, who, and Dr. Will Cole and Ben Azadi. So these are some names you can go to if it's something that you want to dig into a little deeper. You can go to their, find data through those people. But, okay, so let's get into some of these different fasting types, right? So the first one which is pretty much what most of us should do, and it's super simple, is your 12 to 13 hour fast, right? You eat during the day and you sleep at night. But I think the key to understand here is we shouldn't be eating that 3-hour period prior to bed. It's too hard on the GI and on the digestive system. The body doesn't work well that way. A great story. I think it's a great story. So my sweet husband, we came out of our fast. He had to go out of town for work, and so he went to this. Doesn't matter where he went, but he went to have dinner, and it was so good, and I ate so much, and it was late for them. It was 2 hours ahead, so it was on Eastern time. So he goes to bed, and he's miserable. So 2 lessons out of that: don't eat late, because then he woke up at 3:30 in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep. So he's like, well, I guess I'll just work, and he knew what he did, right? So don't eat late, but also don't overdo it when you're coming out of a fast. Now, we had already done our refeeding cycle. We started slow and low, and we'll go more about that, more into that. But his body's still, when you get into these long fasts, your GI literally slows way down. And so you don't want to just go in and just rev it up. And I told him this, but it's okay. We all, we live and we learn, and it's not a big deal. And like I said, he refeeded. Is that a word? Refed himself. And it was a day later. But either way, it's hard on our body. But we need to have that. We need to have everything, at least in most part, worked through, so the body's not trying to break it down as we're trying to sleep. Okay. Too hard. And so then we've got our time-restricted feeding. And so this is usually between your 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. time period, where you wake up, you do your breakfast, but then you stop eating at 3 o'clock, and then you have the rest of that time to let the body do its job. And so you're kind of going with, it's great for sleep and metabolism. It can stabilize glucose levels. And it matches our circadian genes specific circadian genes for specific variants. So I don't really know that I need to get into this, but it's here, so I'm going to say it. So MTNR1B and clock. So these are a couple of variants that do really well with this type of time-restricted feeding for circadian rhythm purposes. So then we've got your intermittent fasting, right? And most people for intermittent fasting will... you just decide the timing that works best for you, right? So it can be an 8-hour feeding time and a 16-hour non-feeding time. So what does it look like that works best for you, right? So is it a 12 to 8 p.m.? Is it 11 to 7 p.m.? You start getting into that 8 p.m., you're starting to push that that 3-hour window where you're supposed to not be eating. So it kind of depends on when you go to bed, right? So it's 11 o'clock. If 11 o'clock's your bedtime, then 8 o'clock's fine. But keep that in mind if you're wanting to do something like this. Think about, having that 3-hour period before you go to bed. So maybe more of a 10 to 6 or 11 to 7 could be better for you. Now, 16 hours is a long time for some people. So starting out slowly might be the better option. But some people, this works okay. Again, it really, really depends on the person and listening to your body. There also is the alternate day fasting. So this is more of a 36-hour fast. So it's a 36-hour fast and a 12-hour refeed, and so can be good for that stubborn weight loss. Can be good for autophagy, which is that cellular clean out, and then an insulin reset. So it does require, though, strategic refeeding, and when we say that, it really is about starting slowly. And so I have this sort of later on in the talk, but I think that we might as well just talk a little bit about it now. So starting out with something that's light, because the GI is starting to slow down. So you don't want to bring in. I think that we have to be super careful anytime with any kind of fasting that we're doing, that we're aware about how we are eating, because I know for a lot of us, I've done this myself, that you're in that place of you're just really hungry, and so you just eat a lot and you eat really fast, and we don't want to do that. So you've got to, wherever you are, start it out slowly. So think about starting with these longer fasts, thinking about starting with bone broth, these things that are super simple. You can do, I love perfect aminos. I think perfect aminos is really cool. It's protein that's already broken down. It's just the amino acids. It's 100% absorbable. Meat is more like 30% absorbed. So if you, that was what I did, is I started with refeeding with amino acids, the perfect aminos, and then we did bone broth, and then we had a little food. So, but you wanna maybe even a smoothie, something that's, you know, that might be something that could be beneficial as well. This is not something that, it's not like you're doing a 36-hour fast and then a 12-hour refeed, and a 36-hour fast and a 12-hour refeed. I think that, you know, this is starting to get where for some people it can backfire if there's too much stress going on. It can be problematic for the thyroid. Even, and I should say this, even for women, doing the 16-hour fasting, 8-hour feeding window can be hard on the thyroid. And this is, to me, this is more of the true intermittent fasting. I don't often tell women they should do long-term intermittent fasting. I think it's too hard on us. In my mind, it's more if we want to do periodic longer fasts, I think maybe is what makes a little more sense for us as women. So doing a periodic 36-hour fast, doing a periodic, 48-hour, or, you know, even the 3 to 5 day fasts, right, which we'll get into. But I think intermittent fasting is, I think it's harder on us. It is harder on us. So going back to, if it's something that you want to do, great, but watch your labs. Watch your thyroid. Don't take for granted that that you are always going to feel everything that's going on. You gotta really have a good idea. So I would say, as you're learning your body, if you have the ability, if you're going to do this, if you have the ability to test at minimum quarterly to watch your thyroid, to watch any of the other markers, then I think that's, you know, then you're just learning your body, right? That's what we want anyway. But we really have to protect our thyroid. So then we get into the extended water fast, which is what my husband and I did. So these are the 3 to 5 day fasts. These are what will push that deep autophagy, so that deep cellular cleansing. The cells get to this point where they're like, okay, I'm just going to dump all the junk, which is what we want. We don't want cells to hold on to this stuff. Right, and so also you hit that day 3, you start to produce stem cells. This is what's really cool to me. Is, sorry, dog hair on my glasses. It's everywhere, right? Is that stem cells, when they start to produce, when they start to ramp up. Now, okay, back up a little bit. Stem cells, as we age, we have less and less of them that are produced. There's a really cool product that's called StemRegen that can help us to produce our own stem cells that are already in us, that just sort of stop, right? So they're produced in the red marrow. We have, as we age, less and less red marrow, and so we have less and less stem cells, and this helps us to produce the reserve stem cells that we have. So the StemRegen is a really cool product, but if we do something like fasting, it will ramp up that stem cell production as well. And so then stem cells go to the places that need it most. So if you have a chronic pain, if you have a chronic issue, this is where they talk about autoimmune conditions. They talk about potentially for cancer. There's been a lot of data, a lot of studies on these longer water fasts with cancer. I'm not going to get into that because that's outside of what I know enough about, but the data's out there, so you can look into that stuff. But that's where the stem cells come in and start repairing and regenerating and cleaning stuff up. So really, really cool. It's also an immune reset, right? So this is where Mindy Pelz digs into the autoimmunity. And if you have an autoimmune condition, could it potentially be beneficial to do an extended fast, not consistently, but do an extended fast to help to reset the immune system? It decreases inflammation, right? All of these things start to come in and help to repair and sort of rejuvenate the body. And so, but we do want to be careful. So there are some who believe we want to, have some micronutrient support. Do we? Mindy Pels will say sometimes maybe and sometimes no. So that's helpful, I know. But I'll tell you what we did. We did tea, obviously just herbal tea and water and electrolytes. So we definitely did the electrolytes. And so for us, I bought a keto electrolyte, and I think that was really helpful for us. And I think that we have to be really careful when we're looking at where you are as far as your health status. So if you're underweight, don't do it. I lost 6 pounds in 4 days. Now it'll come back. And here's another cool thing, is the ketosis. So you move into ketosis. So I think within 36 hours you start to move into a sort of a light ketosis. But you start getting into that deep ketosis. It's muscle preserving. So you don't have to worry about muscle wasting. Now, if you're already underweight and you don't have muscle anyway, that's has the potential to be problematic. But that was the thing, is I do CrossFit, right? I thought I was afraid that I was going to lose muscle tone and muscle mass, and that's not going to happen. So the ketones are protective, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, you start going into the longer fast. I don't know how long it takes to actually start losing that muscle mass. That would be, I guess, another question that I don't have the answer to yet, but would like to find that out. But anyway, those 3 to 5 day water fasts, you're not going to lose muscle. You lose some glycogen, but you eat again, and it's going to fill back up. So pretty cool stuff. Okay, so here's where we talked a little bit a few minutes ago about Dr. Longo and his modified fasting. So he actually has a kit. He's put together these kits that are super strategic in the components of them, right? So it's a little bit of carb, very, very low protein, a little bit of fat. I'm trying to remember what else in there. Actually, even a little bit of a sweet. I think it's a little chocolate wafer or something like that. But that's one. You do that for 5 days. And so they are 8 to 1,100 calories a day. Can you do this on your own? Probably. I think I tried to do it on my own one time. Just to kind of play around with it, just to see. And so I sort of feel like, though, let's see if I can explain this well, because as you know, it's still a little bit new to me, and I'm trying to remember how I felt back then. But I remember that you start to get around that noon, 1 o'clock, and you're waiting for that food to come in, because you have food to go to, even if it's super minimal. You have food to go to. I feel like it's so a lot of this is mindset maybe, but I feel like that my blood sugar dropped and I became more, that blood sugar jittery feeling. More of that happened when I knew that I had the ability to eat. Knowing that I was not going to eat for 4 days, it totally changes your mindset. And so you're much more prepared for what that looks like, or what that's going to feel, even if you don't know, right? You're prepared to you just know you're not going to eat, so there's nothing coming. So I think it's this cool biological process that happens when you know that there's the potential for food versus you know that there's not the potential for food. So that's what I think. But it is it's a great option, especially if you're just starting out with some of these longer fasts. It's a great option. It's great for women. It's great for those who are struggling with some adrenal dysfunction, that kind of thing, and the autoimmune conditions. I think it's really good. It can help with insulin and blood sugar. It also can support some regeneration without the starvation stress, right? And so it's not true starvation, but there is some stress that goes along with it. it's not an easy process, the longer fast, for sure. But totally doable. Totally doable. Okay, let me see if there's anything that I missed on this. I don't think so. So let's dig into, this does come from Mindy Pelz in her book, and I really liked her book. But what she does is she talks about what is going on during each of the different timed fasting. And so if we go into this 12 to 16 hour fast, so this is the intermittent fasting, the things that are going to happen during this time. So lowers insulin, improves blood sugar. Man, I just got calls coming in nonstop. I should need a do not disturb at this time, I guess. But it lowers insulin, improves blood sugar, and initiates mild ketosis. So one of the things that I would highly recommend if you're new to fasting, any type of fasting, is having a continuous glucose monitor, so you know the foods, the times when your blood sugar will spike and when it's going to tank, and what causes that, and during fasting. So I wish that I had mine. I wore one for several months, so I have a good idea of the things that spike me and drop me, and what it looks like when I get hungry and have these blood sugar drops. But stress also can spike blood sugar. So what does it look like if you're doing a longer fast and is your blood sugar going to spike? What does it look like if you decide you want to have coffee during a longer fast? Is that going to spike your blood sugar? For some people it will. For some people it won't. If your blood sugar spikes, it's probably going to take you out of ketosis, which is going to take you out of the fast. And so and take you out of the benefits of it, right? So there's still benefits to the fasting, but if you're going to do the longer, if you're going to do it for long term, you want as much of the benefit as possible. You want to get into that deep, true autophagy, because you don't want to just sit there and be hungry just to do it. That's no fun for anyone. So I think that it's a really smart thing to do. And the next time we do this, I'm going to order a CGM and have it for that. And probably what I would do, so if it's CGM, you have it, at least to date, the CGMs are for 2 weeks? No. Why can't I remember? Yeah, it's 2 weeks, because you have to have 2 a month. I would probably have it the week before, or a few days before, and then during, and then a few days after. I think that would make sense for doing a longer term fast. Working through it in my head now, but that's what I want to do to prepare for the next one. Okay, so if we look into fasting at the 17 hours or more, this is where we start to get into more deeper cellular cleanup and autophagy, right? So you have AMPK rises and mTOR suppresses. Now, mTOR is an interesting biological process that happens with amino acids, so with intake of protein. So it's needed for, this is why protein's so cool, right? So it's needed for muscle repair, and it's a builder, right? But in excess, it can increase aging, increase inflammation, and increase cancer. So it is triggered by protein, insulin, and nutrients. So mTOR is it's a good, normal, healthy process, right? But I think what we want to be aware of, even if we're not fasting, is protein's amazing, protein's important. All protein is not necessarily a good thing. Think of the carnivore diets, right? So carnivore diet can have its benefits short term. I believe that that's the case. And I think most people find it beneficial because it decreases their symptoms. Sure. But what's it doing to us biologically and biomechanically, and not biomechanically, biochemically, and what's it doing to our microbiome? It is totally going to decrease the diversity of our microbiome. Not a good thing. So you're symptom free for a bit. What happens if you try to go back? Then people are like, oh, it didn't work for me. I got to go back to carnivore. And then all you're doing is increasing mTOR, right? Which in time is going to be problematic as well. So this is where we can't be so dogmatic about all of these different diets and different things, especially when we're all so different. I'm different than every single person out there in the world, and so are you. And so we cannot assume that carnivore is the ideal way to go. There are a lot of people who've done a lot of, certainly not long-term studies, but who fully believe that carnivore is the way to go. And they're high-level, out there influencers, some really good data. But I think that we've got to take this back to basics and understand biology and biochemistry and understand how God made us. And that's not how we're made, right? So it goes back to, if you're having symptoms, and carnivore diet, I know I totally went off on a tangent, but I think it's fine. But and if carnivore diet is the thing that is helping you to manage, you still have to ask the question why. I will just always dig deeper, always ask why, because there's always going to be more layers to it that we need to get to. Okay. So then, if we don't take in nutrients and we don't start or trigger this mTOR process, then that's when we do trigger AMPK, and AMPK is triggered by fasting, caloric restriction, and movement. So this is why movement, we got to move, right? It's important. So what it does is it boosts fat oxidation, ketones, mitochondrial biogenesis, and autophagy. So doing these longer fasts is going to decrease mTOR for a period of time, increase AMPK for a time, and this is a good thing, right? So even if it's short term, this is a good thing. Okay, so I have just a little chart here. So your 12 to 16 hour fasts, mTOR does decrease and AMPK does start going up. Then your 24 to 36 hour fast, mTOR really is starting to decline, and AMPK is really starting to go up. And then you go to your 48 to 72 hour fast, and mTOR turns off, and AMPK is at peak activation. So pretty cool, right? So if you start doing these 2 to 3 day fasts periodically, not regularly, but periodically, then you have that peak AMPK activation. So really interesting. Then, though, you want to turn it back on. So you want to refeed. So you've got your mTOR then turned back on, which is essential for building immune cells. It's essential for tissue regeneration and for recovery. So this again goes back to it's never a one or the other. We have to have balance in all of these things, and I think that this is a really cool way of looking at the biochemistry of fasting. Okay, so moving on to we got into, so that was the 17-hour fast. So now moving into a 24-hour fast, which can be a great gut reset. People ask me what I do for a living. I'm like, well, I help people with their gut. And I do a lot of other things, but that's such a big part of what I do because so many people are struggling with gut dysfunction. And so if we do these 24-hour fasts and the gut starts to slow down and we start moving stuff out of the gut, right? The gut still is active, but if you don't have anything in it, it's going to move out bacteria, it's going to move out fungus, it's going to move out toxins, it's going to move out the things that are not supposed to be there. It's going to start to heal the gut lining, right? So if it doesn't have to focus on digesting food, which is a good thing, that's what it's there for, but periodically giving it that break can really help give a really good gut reset. And so that's when intestinal stem cells activate. How cool is that? And then the leaky gut healing and microbial reset. So I know we talk about this all the time. If you don't know what leaky gut is, it's when cells come apart when they're not supposed to, or they're. I'm going to back up. I'm going to give more detail because it doesn't make sense. Zonulin is a protein that pulls cells apart. It's a normal, natural process that the body goes through during different times. We're not going to get into that, but it's supposed to go up, cells come apart, supposed to go down, cells come back together. Right? It's normal. What happens though when zonulin is chronically elevated, when we're chronically stressed, when we have, the things that increase zonulin, alcohol, stress, drugs, foods, gluten, different, things like that. Those are the things that are going to push zonulin. It's going to go up, cells come apart. Zonulin stays elevated, so the cells stay chronically open and apart and pulled apart. So what's happening then is you have your foods, bacteria, viruses, fungi, all of those things getting into the bloodstream too soon, not supposed to be there, so the body's like, all right, massive red flags, massive inflammatory responses, and the body's pissed off. What does that do? Leads to disease, leads to dysfunction, leads to potentially autoimmune diseases. So having this period of 24 hours of giving the gut a break, zonulin will start to go down. There'll be some healing processes going on with the gut lining. But then we have to make sure that we're bringing in, if we're doing a 24-hour fast because we're doing a gut reset, how do we want to start back up? Bone broth. If we can tolerate bone broth, right? Some people can't tolerate foods high in glutamate. Whole other conversation. But bone broth is super high in glutamate, which is super supportive of the gut lining. The gut lining uses more glutamate than any other part of the body. So we want to bring in something like a bone broth that's high in glutamate, high in minerals and collagen that's going to help to repair the gut. But then we also want to bring in fermented foods. So whether it's probiotics or just eat some sauerkraut, right? That's what I did. Is I didn't have any that I had made, so I just went to the store and I grabbed a jar of, like, it was beet kraut. So good. Of course, I was starving, but it was really good. And so you repopulate the gut and start it off in a really positive way to start to refeed again. Okay. Let's see, so moving into 36 hours, this is when we start getting to that fat burner phase. So that's when, we've got glycogen becomes depleted and fat becomes the primary fuel. We have growth hormones spike and ketones peak. So that 36 hours is kind of a cool little spot for all of these processes to kind of start coming together, right? And it's not a terrible fast. It's kind of a long time, but if you're counting, what we would do, let's see, I think we started after dinner, then you've got the whole next day, and then you're sleeping again. So you've got, half the time you're sleeping, and then the next morning you get to have breakfast. So you're going, a full day without food, but it's not the worst thing in the world when you're utilizing your evening hours to fast. So, not too bad. That's a good one. So then we get into 48 hours. 48 hours is cool because that's a dopamine reset, which I think is really cool. So dopamine sensitivity is restored, food addiction, sugar cravings are reduced. So that can be a really good one too for that mental and emotional component, the neurotransmitters. I think that's so fun. That was new to me. I didn't know that. I thought that was really cool. So then we've got the 72 plus hours, and this is where you have the immune reset. So you've got immune stem cell regeneration begins. Old immune cells are cleared. That's super cool. Autoimmunity, inflammation, and chronic conditions can then benefit from something like this. So it sounds great, and it is great. But you really, I want to kind of reiterate knowing where you are, what you're able to handle, and starting out slowly. So if you're someone who is just really struggling with multiple chronic conditions, is starting out with a full 3 to 5 day fast the way to go? Probably not. I think you want to build up to it, but we don't want to overly stress the body, but some of the stress is good, right? We've got this process called hormesis, and hormesis is this cool process because this is where the body is stressed, but it's a beneficial stress. There's also, I think this is a really cool consideration, is we can talk about also what's called phytohormesis. So phytohormesis is when there's certain phytonutrients, certain plant foods that create stress in the body that is a beneficial stress. So I'm going to flip some things on their head a little bit here. Think about lectins and phytates. Lectins and phytates are anti-nutrients in the body, right? They're in beans, they're in some grains, right? And so we have a lot of people who are like, beans and grains are bad. We shouldn't eat beans and grains. I've been eating beans and grains from the beginning of time. What if those anti-nutrients in there, for some people, they're going to be really bad, so or have real impact. So do we need to pay attention to that? Sure. But is it really sort of this beneficial stress that it puts on the body that builds us up and makes us better? The more I start to dig into things like this, the more I think it's important to keep that in mind. And again, going back to not being so dogmatic about food. Beans, are they terrible? No. Some people might react to them, but we got to ask why. What is the problem and what's going on? Same with grains. I've been on the fence about grains and beans for a really long time, especially grains. Now, again, so many factors that go into this, especially genetics and health status and how many carbs each person might need, because genetically some people need more carbs than others. But if we just take it down to just grains and beans, just generally speaking, is this a part of God's creation that we need certain stressors in order to build us up? Just like in life, right? We build character by the stressors in life. They suck and they're hard sometimes, but we grow from them and we learn from them. And we take good things away from them. So I think the same thing happens with us as with our physical body and the foods that we take in. So I'm also not saying that if you're having major symptoms, you shouldn't just manage. It still goes back to asking why and allowing the body to heal, so you're not dealing with those symptoms. Okay. Let's see. Okay, moving on to, let's see, we talked about that. I do want to dig a little bit into the genetic component of it, because I think it plays a key, it certainly can play a key role. But let's do a quick recap on genetics and these genetic variants. So this is not true. This is not like true genetics. This is more epigenetics. And so if you haven't heard the term before, epigenetics is variants that control gene expression. So the reason I love this is because, in my world, this is God's gift of free will, right? So every choice that we make can play a role, or does play a role, in our health. And so, and it plays a role in gene expression and impacts gene expression. So the good choices that we make and the bad choices that we make all play a role in gene expression. So that means I play a role in my health tomorrow, 50 years from now, as well as if I had kids, and anybody who does have kids, in the health of kiddos. It's fascinating stuff. It's amazing. Makes you super accountable, right? I mean, that's sort of the point of it, is having that understanding that my choices impact so many things that I do. Now, there are things that we can't control, right? We can't control, unfortunately, the toxins that are outside in the air, right? We can control what's in our home. We also can't control things that are, traumatic stressors and stuff like that. So there are some of these things, but we have an amazing amount of control. And I think it's beautiful that it's up to me. It's not up to anybody else, right? It's a really cool thing. Because we have certain variants doesn't mean that they've expressed. But that's why also we look at labs, we look at symptoms, because we put all of these things together. It helps us to understand what genes have expressed and what have not. But if we start to dig into it and we look at certain genes that impact glucose and insulin, so some people with these specific genes, I'm not going to name them out because some of you will know what they are, most of you won't. Then they all mean lots of big things. If they're something that I think most of you will know, then I'll state it, like MTHFR, right, or COMT. A lot of people at this point know what those are. But some people will crash with fasting. and it's not necessarily a mindset thing. It really is more of a gene expression. So those who have these particular genes, if you know, or variants, if you know that you have these, that might help you determine what it is that you need to do when it comes to fasting, how long you fast, and if you fast at all. And maybe it's even building up to it, right? And so we can look at stress and neurotransmitters. And so this is where we have the COMT or the COMT gene. And so we have these these sensitive metabolizers. So it can be more, they can create more anxiety, more insomnia, more mood swings when doing certain types of fasting. So it might be that if you do want to do longer fasting, you build up to it. So your body, so you're able to manage it better. I'll tell you, for me, sleep was not terrible. It wasn't great, but it was manageable. It's super interesting though, waking up feeling like you're concave. This is a very bizarre feeling, but that is what it feels like. Okay, so you've got your fat metabolism genes. And so they can create some poor ketone signaling, which can create fatigue and brain fog on these fasts. Again, doesn't mean you can't do it, but I think it's a matter of modifying in order to mitigate some of the issues that can happen. And then your methylation and nutrient demand. So this is where your, MTHFR, your, let's see, I just lost my point. No, sorry, back up. No, we'll just keep going. So methylation, nutrient demand, so MTHFR, CBS, PEMT, those are pretty well known for a lot of people at this point. And so they impact B12, glycine, folate, and they can be, significantly depleted during this fast, during a longer fast, which can create emotional and mental crashes. So are there some people who want to add in some of these nutrients? Maybe. I think, sort of the gist of what I got out of a lot of the research that I was doing was really just let the body do what it's supposed to do. Going into this, I thought that I would support my body with amino acids because I was afraid of the muscle wasting, and I didn't want to go backwards from the work that I'd done in CrossFit. But learning that there would not be the muscle wasting, and that if I did the amino acids, it's going to push mTOR, and the AMPK is going to stay down, and I'm not going to get the benefits out of it that I wanted. So I literally I took it all out and I didn't do any supplementation. It's not that long, right? I think it's important that we don't supplement all the time anyway. So just let the body do its job. Now, for some people, it might be that it's a better thing to do in order to get you through it. Could be. Then there are your fat metabolism genes. So if you've heard me talk, ApoE is one of those because I'm an ApoE44. And so for these, there can be poor ketone signaling, which can create fatigue, brain fog on the fasts. So I would say for me, there was definitely fatigue. And there was probably a little bit of the brain fog. My husband didn't. He's actually the exact opposite of me on the ApoE spectrum, which is so interesting to me. But he had very little brain fog. He had a few, some of that lightheadedness that he got a couple of times when you stand up fast. I was pretty fatigued and a little bit foggy, more foggy at times, more in the morning when I woke up, I was pretty foggy. And then as the day went on, actually things would get better and I was more motivated to do some things. But then in the evening, it really was this time of slowing down. That's what we both wanted to do, and it was intentional, right? It was intentional and unintentional. You go into it, we went into it knowing that we wanted to take the time to slow down. We kind of hibernated in the house. Did a little bit of work on those on the Thursday and Friday that we had to work, but we kept it pretty minimal. And then the Saturday and Sunday we stayed in, although we did go to church on Sunday. And it's funny because I was like, do I really want to go to church? Well, yeah. Part of this is the spiritual aspect of it, and it wasn't bad. It's really the getting up and getting going, and then once you're going, things were really fine. And what I also found super interesting for me, and my husband experienced the same thing, was we never got hungrier. You were hungry, but you kind of stayed the same amount of hungry. I didn't experience a lot of grumbling and growling, which is interesting. Some, because sometimes you get to the point you got that really deep grumbling and growling, and my blood sugar I feel like didn't totally drop. But I also have been working on my blood sugar for quite some time now. Because of my ApoE status, it does tend to go up and down. Even, I look pretty healthy. There's a lot going on there with this ApoE4 gene. So, that's been a good focus of mine, and so I didn't notice significant blood sugar drops. It's probably not necessarily true if I'm kind of lightheaded, right? You don't have the nutrients, and so I'm sure that I'd be curious to know where it was, which is why next time I'll have a CGM. But the hunger sort of stayed the same. It got frustrating because it was always there, so I will say that, but it just sort of stayed the same. Okay. What else do we have? Circadian genes. So there are these certain circadian genes that, so the nighttime eating. Oh, I see. So what this is talking about is if you are one who eats later instead of fasting, that the nighttime eating can disrupt glucose, insulin, and melatonin signaling. So. Interestingly, though, if you have these circadian genes, then probably fasting would work really well for those issues. Anyway, okay, we are running low on time, which I kind of knew would happen. But let's run through this just real quick because I want to talk a little bit about male and female physiology as far as fasting is concerned, especially women. I think it's really important because if you're cycling. Fasting with your cycle, especially if you're doing intermittent fasting or some of these shorter long-term fasting, doing it with your cycle and knowing the best times to do it's really important. So the follicular phase, which is of course days 1 through 10, is the best time for longer fasts. And so you have higher estrogen, your estrogen's rising, so it creates better resilience. And then during your luteal phase, 6 days 16 through 28, that's when you want to reduce fasting. So you want to focus on nourishment and progesterone support. So think about it this way, right? You have the first days, first 2 weeks of your cycle is sort of you feel good, you're out and about, you're going, you're doing, you're ready for it, and so you can handle the stress that a fast is going to put on the body. Whereas as you come through that second half of your cycle, things you think about, the fall and winter seasons of the year. This is your fall and winter of your cycle, where things slow down, you get darker, you're more inclined to want to stay home, rest, that kind of thing. So this is not the best time for you to be for you to fast because it's harder on the body. And then let's see, perimenopause and menopause. So you have greater sensitivity to fasting stress, and then favor shorter fast, early eating windows, and nutrient repletion. So I am fairly newly, lucky me, menopausal, and I still would do this again, but I also know my health status, right? I don't have any autoimmune conditions, although if I did, I would do this anyway, because just for the reasons that we've already discussed. And then, but I am super careful about when I eat and how I eat for multiple reasons, right? For genetic reasons, for my phase in life and that kind of thing. But I would do this again. Actually, we're talking about doing it like around Easter, so I think that would be cool. Maybe a 3-day, maybe a 4-day, we'll see. For men, so men just have more stable hormones. Men do really, really well with fasting. They do really well with intermittent fasting. So much more tolerant than women are for the most part. So they do really well with the 16 8-hour feeding window, good 24-hour fasts, as well as the extended fasts. Now, I think that it's important to consider, if you're working out, what does that look like during a fast? You can burn out if you're training. So I did Hot Works. So I have a client who owns one of a Hot Works, kind of a cool franchise where you go in, you do your you do your workout in a sauna, an infrared sauna. I mean, super cool, super therapeutic, right? I actually did not work out. I went in and I did the sauna and I laid there and I meditated and I prayed and I enjoyed that piece of it. My husband did a Friday workout, but neither one of us did a Saturday, Sunday workout. There's no way. So listen to your body, pay attention. But I don't think, it's worth pushing a workout during a long extended fast like that. And so if you have burnout training plus fasting, there's this, stress involved there. So is that the best time? Probably not. And so testosterone can drop for men if you fast too much. So it's something to keep in mind. And then there are certain SNPs, FTO comped, that can increase fatigue and mood crashes for men and women as well. So we talked a little bit about this already with the thyroid. Fasting lowers active T3, raises reverse T3 as a conversion mechanism. And so this can be helpful short term, but can be harmful long term if the thyroid is already sluggish. So this is where we have to really understand where our thyroid is, be really careful with any kind of thyroid issues. If you're on thyroid meds, know your body, support your thyroid. And I think that doing, extended intermittent fasting for women is probably not the best idea. So when you refeed, you have to include tyrosine, B vitamins, selenium, iodine, magnesium. Be careful with iodine if you have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis, because iodine has the potential of pushing autoimmunity. So there's so much that goes into thyroid. Well, there's so much that goes into all of this, right? But just want to really understand thyroid function. If this is something you're considering, find somebody who can help you through the process and make sure you're not doing more harm than good for this stuff. So women are much more vulnerable to fasting-induced thyroid suppression. So we don't want that, right? We're already so prone, many of us, to putting the weight on. If your thyroid's suppressed, you're just going to put more weight on. No good, no fun, and it makes you feel like crap. So, okay. So last but not least, I think it's important because I was super curious about fasting with autoimmunity or any really, chronic condition. And this is something that I still want to dig deeper into. But what is, when it comes to autoimmunity, what's happened? And I will say this over and over again, I don't believe that it's immune dysfunction. The body's going to protect, the body's ultimate job is to keep you alive. If it doesn't have what it needs, or if there's something that's going on, the immune system does what it knows how to do. So it's not like it's going in and attacking you, like what we hear, it's not attacking you, but there's a process that's going on because there's something that needs to be addressed in the body, right? We got to figure out what that is. And so fasting can help with autoimmunity because it can reduce immune triggers. So think about food antigens, leaky gut, things like that. So by activating autophagy, which you're getting rid of dysfunctional immune cells, right? Regenerating new immune cells via stem cell activation at that 3-day plus or 72-hour plus time period. So fasting can be strategic and supported. So for those, that's when you want to do your electrolytes, and you might consider your methylation cofactors for those who are genetically predisposed to, low methylation. So your B12, your choline, glycine, things like that, and then rest and calm and not overexertion. So I think we talked enough about the refeeding, and I think that's where probably a good point. We're kind of over time, but. Such a fun conversation. I learned a ton, both going through it myself as well as just digging into the data. And there's so much more still to learn on what it can do and going really deep with this stuff. But I just have enjoyed the heck out of this. And so if you have questions about this stuff, if you want guidance, if you just, whatever it is, feel free to reach out. You can always find me everywhere. It's Taste Life Nutrition. Website's tastelifenutrition.com. You can fill out a health analysis that I've got on the website. We will chat. And then, of course, there is your Precision Wellness Blueprint, which has been my new favorite thing to do, where we're kind of doing this kind of stuff. Now, it's not the fasting itself, but it's really layering in data, layering in genetics, layering in all of this information that is you to create what it is that you need for you, right? So if it's the food, it's the supplements, it's the lifestyle, it's whatever it is we can do to help you to optimize to be your very best, because that's what this life is all about. So much goodness in this life, and if we don't feel well, we don't do well. And so that's my ultimate goal for myself, and then of course anybody who I work with is just to feel good, so you can get out there and have some fun, work hard, right? So let me know if you have questions or anything. You can see behind me, you can see the QR codes to your Precision Wellness Blueprint. You can go to my link tree. You can kind of go anywhere. You can find some of this stuff. It's all going to be linked in the videos and the podcast sites and that stuff as well. So feel free to reach out. I hope that you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. We'll see you here next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on kuhsdenver.com. See y'all later. Bye. God bless.